Hey, I'm Robin Gully.
I'm John Justin.
We are your Ward 2 council reps here to give you your council recap for, what's the date?
October 9th.
October 9th, 2023, Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yes.
And actually, that's not a bad place to start. It wasn't the first thing on our open council work session, but it is Indigenous Peoples Day. And so we spent some time today talking about how we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day at the council, and also how we recognize the fact that we are on Indigenous land here in our community. We had a proclamation read by Councilmember Armin. We also talked about how we recognize it as a city. It's a state holiday now, but we did have a council meeting tonight. In future years, we effectively agreed that we are going to move our council meeting onto the Tuesday after Indigenous Peoples Day. So if you are thinking about coming to a council meeting a year from now, we're going to have a council meeting on Tuesday, with the idea that we are continually thinking about how we acknowledge and pay attention to the fact that this is a really important part of our community, and that, that this is a part of not just our heritage, part of our present day.
And I was glad, because it isn't, there's an exemption for local municipalities. There's a term, it's a more concrete term that I can't remember right now. So we could choose to continue to have it on the Monday. And I think that some council people brought up the idea that the predictability of people knowing it's Monday, I can go to the council meeting. And we don't want to dissuade that, obviously. We want you to show up and know what's going on. But, and I can speak personally, it's important to me that we really show support for that. And I'm really proud that we've done that. I think it's a long time coming, and I think that Minnesota made the right decision. And I think that as a city, it's good for us to kind of follow that and honor it the same way. So I'm happy to say that I think that was a good decision.
I think so too. And I think in future years, we may think more about ways that we can talk about the history of our city and talk about the history of the folks who have lived on this land in our city for Indigenous Peoples Day on Tuesday rather than a Monday.
Exactly. And then athletic facilities rental policy. So mostly this is sort of, we haven't had a policy for this. And this is something that applies to specifically the ball fields, the ice arena,
the dome, which is
not the dome. Because that's privately run, but any athletic facility. So this isn't like picnic structures and podiums and things like that. This isn't for festivals. It's specifically because we do have a lot of requests for that time, and just we haven't really had a firm idea of how we're going to do that. So that was one part to kind of figure out, well, how do we choose, if we have a conflict, a appropriate way to determine who wins the coin toss, basically, on who gets to use the field on a particular day. And then the other purpose is we have had most of the people that use them are great about this. We have had some situations where we've had some leftover trash and things like that. And so there's a whole other thing in there about kind of a checkout policy and a deposit that would be used if somebody does leave the fields in bad condition, that we would have some way of kind of getting some recompensation, and also kind of that would be tracked. So if there were future years and they were looking for it, that would be something where they might move down the priority list because they haven't been a good steward. And the reason for that is that, the day after a softball game, I'd love it if my kids or your kids or somebody went there and there wasn't trash everywhere, because these are really for the community first and for organization second. And so I think that we're going to flesh that out a little bit more, but I think it'll help to kind of keep that park maintenance kind of pushed back onto the people that are using the parks for these larger sort of events. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, we think it sounds like a good plan, and just a way to make sure that we're keeping these things really nice for our community. And I think a lot of that's been an ongoing thing for us to figure out, how do we do the best job that we can to make sure that things are maintained and and that we're taking care of them. So,
and I mentioned that picnic facilities and things like that are not included in this. It's not because they're not going to be. We're also working, it's not there yet, but this is the first step. Staff is now working also on a policy for the same sort of thing, for that sort of maintenance of those areas.
I do want to say, and I'll say this, we have an event coming up on Sunday that I'm really excited about, the Latino Heritage Festival at Harmon Park from 12 to 3, so please come. We are very conscious of not wanting to also like burden people with extra kinds of like administrative or like any kind of what's the word I'm looking for? But anyway,
red
like
tape.
burden.
Oh no.
Yeah, we don't want to have red tape as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So we try very hard to be thoughtful about making sure that if we have red tape, it is in the service of our community.
It's a balance. Mm-hmm. It's kind of that thing. You don't want to make anybody not want to have events because we want as many events as we can have, but at the same time, we don't want other people to have to shoulder the result of those events if we have some stuff that goes wrong.
Yeah.
So that's the idea.
All right. So then we were on to the council meeting. Yeah, it was a short open council work session and actually a pretty light council meeting. But we started out council comments, a couple of things. We have Latino Heritage Month celebration at Harmon Park on Sunday. We had the opening in the past couple weeks of the opening.
The ribbon cutting.
The ribbon cutting.
The groundbreaking. Groundbreaking, that's
yes.
the term,
I think. It's been a long night, you guys.
Yeah, it has.
Groundbreaking. I know, it was a light meeting, but kind of a long night. The groundbreaking for the Guild Crisis Mental Health Center on the Dakota County Northern Service Center. And, I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge because so many folks in our community were just really wonderful at coming out when we heard about that at the council meeting a few months ago, probably last winter. And we're great about coming out and sharing their stories about accessing services, mental health services, and about using, having family members using them, and about how important this kind of facility was to them and their families. And so I feel like this is a tribute to all of you, and just thank you for coming out and supporting that. And we're really excited that they're starting
moving forward. Yep.
Yep.
First public hearing, mill and overlay for a second. And rather than getting into the specifics of this, I think we can get into, so this is a first step, and then there'll be a second round where we actually determine the full assessments. And there was a lot of public commentary, and that's also always super welcomed, and I'm always glad when people come out. And so I think rather than address any of the specifics of that, because it probably will...
Remind folks what a mill and overlay is.
Oh, mill and overlay is a project where they come through, they take off, when a road is beyond the point of patching, crack sealing, all of these other things, but it's not to the point where you have to fully reconstruct the road, which means
like
digging...
we did on Annapolis.
Yeah, digging deep in takes forever, lots of stuff going on. Mill overlay, they take the top 2 inches off, they mill it, they overlay it with 2 inches. So it's a much more significant project than like when you see them come out and like do the crack seals, which you've probably seen, or what they call hot patching, where they'll take a pothole or a problem area and they'll just kind of lay a thing over it, which is, what the maintenance side of streets is. This is really to the point where you're reconstructing, it's just not a full reconstruction. And so there is additional cost, obviously. And so every time this comes up, understandably, people are not excited to reach in and pay a chunk of money out of their pocket to do it, which I totally understand. There's never been a homeowner, I think, that was ever like happy to see a notice that they were going to spend $1,800, $1,900, $2,000 to have their street redone. And so I guess we can get a little bit into the larger scale thing of that, and I will do the first half of that, which is one thing to remember is that when we do these assessments, it is only 35% of the cost goes to the property owners. That's the cap. We have a street fund that throws a bunch of money in there. We don't charge for the sewer work. And so there is, I think a lot of times people get unhappy because they feel like they are footing the bill for everyone using the road, which is a valid question and a valid concern. And so I'd like to just remind this, and this is across the board, because I think I've been in 10 of these conversations, and the question is always the same thing. And it's good to remember that there is actually a considerable offset to the cost of this to the property owner. I know that doesn't ease the pain of paying the money. I get that. I'm sure I will feel the same way when I get that letter when they redo my road. But it is important to remember that there is actually, the city's contribution is at least 65%, and 35% still is a burden to many, and we want to work with people. We offer deferred interest. You can assess it to your property taxes. It's right around 3%. And that 3% is basically maintenance for the city to carry that debt. If you've tried to get a loan, a home equity loan, or any kind of loan, finding a 3% loan, good luck. And I mean, great credit and everything, you're going to pay more than that. So I understand that sometimes it can look like, well, the city's making money off of us. We're not making money when we charge 3% interest over a period of 10 years because we're carrying that debt until it's fully repaid.
Yeah, all we're doing, like the 3% pays for at least some of us like holding the, sort of like paying the money up front and then getting it back and the administrative costs with that. We really try to be very thoughtful anytime, like we don't like charging you money.
Yeah, it's true.
We don't. We understand what a burden it is for folks, and then it can be a bit of a shock to be like, I didn't count on having a $2,000 bill. Yeah. And it can come up kind of quickly. I mean, even when you know that your road needs to be constructed, even when you know the schedule, it usually isn't like on. It's
about a year process from initial notification until you actually will be in the spot where you have to either come up with the money or agree to have it on the assessment. The other alternative to that is publicly funding all our roads, which is something that we did do with sidewalks. We moved sidewalks off of assessment and onto the general fund of the city. The problem with that is that means that property taxes across the city inherently would have to go up. If the city was self-funding and not getting that 35%, if you do the math and you look at it, you're going to see a notable increase in property taxes at the city level. And maybe that's the right thing to do. I'm not saying it's not. I haven't seen anybody jumping at the idea of doing that. If that's something that people did want to change, it's something that we could certainly discuss. But it isn't like it's magically like the city just digs into a different pocket and has money to do this. We would have to get those funds from somewhere, and the only somewhere that can come from is property taxes increasing overall in the city. So,
and in fact, I will say that, don't come at me, but you can talk to me about it. I actually believe, I think we should be publicly funding these things as a whole city. But I haven't felt like we have the support from our community to do that. And in fact, every time folks see their property taxes go up, I mean, understandably, but we have a lot of people who come in and talk to us at the council meeting and say, why are my property taxes going up? This is ridiculous. This is too much. And there's no other, it's just hard. Like, there's not like a secret pot of money to pay for adding costs onto the city that have been historically held by folks who lived there. And so we're really honestly, we have no, aside from, the fact that we both live in the city and agree that, it's going to be like a bit of a bee sting when we get those assessments ourselves. We don't have I don't know that we have strong feelings about it, except that we really haven't felt like we had the support from the community to change it. Yeah. And so if you feel strongly about it, we would love to hear from you. But yeah, I mean, it's tricky because, these assessments come up usually about once every 18 to 20 years, roughly. And so it can be really easy to sort of forget about it between, years 15 and, and 0 when it's coming back around. And you're like, oh, why would I want my property taxes to go up to pay for other people's assessments, And the answer is we would have to decide that we're okay with the fact that that cost is going to get spread out over every single year instead of hitting at one time. Yeah. I mean, then that's the truth. It would go up, but it would go up on your statement. It wouldn't necessarily go up overall, but it would go effectively become, instead of getting charged once every 20 years, you would get charged a little bit every year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And so it's tricky. I mean, this is the sort of, when we did the sidewalk changeover, I think that was the right decision. I think it was a good decision. I think there's a very clear through line to saying that sidewalks are a public amenity in a particular way where they actually do benefit. I mean, they do benefit the people that live there, but they benefit everybody who walks up and down the sidewalk. The same argument can be made for streets, but it's a little tougher to make that argument because those streets do mostly service the people that live on it. Yeah. The predominant use of most of our streets are residential streets. You know, obviously your big Butler, Thompson, I mean, big thoroughfares are different, but when you're talking neighborhoods,
they're funded differently.
They're funded differently. When you're talking neighborhood streets, it's easier to say that the majority of the good goes to the owner of the property. And one last thing, and then we'll get off. And all of this, I'll come back. None of this has to do with this specific project. It's something that I think we should talk about every time we have one of these come up.
Well,
everyone's different.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand there are different hardships and things like that. But and then I lost my train of thought, so that's pretty funny.
Well, were you going to talk about like the garbage? I was
that's probably getting into more of the specifics.
Oh yeah, that's probably
no, it was just.
But that was one comment that we heard, and I just wanted to say we do talk about this every single time it comes up.
Yeah.
So it's not a lack of talking about it, but it is a lack of consensus around how we could make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a little bit too in the weeds, but we did have a few people who came up to say, you know, of course, like the number of garbage trucks that we have tear up the roads. We were talking before this and would say that there's a number of different factors, but garbage trucks are certainly one of them.
Yep.
And we've always like wanted to, you know, sort of been open to the conversation about organized trash collection or like some other system.
Yep.
But again, it's the kind of thing where we have, I mean, I've heard from neighbors who are like, I love our trash collector.
Yep.
And so we haven't, we have taken some steps to like.
Yeah, what we did is we have one less license for garbage hauling than we have currently garbage haulers. That doesn't mean we're going to take a license away from a garbage hauler, but if any of them change ownership, are sold, or, you know, in the best case scenario, consolidate, which is possible, nobody else could come in and add an additional license. So it will shrink over time. I think that we all saw what happened in St. Paul when things did not go very well going to a single garbage hauler. And so I think that that's always in the back of our minds too, is that it can go not the way people expect. So we kind of are trying to do an incremental thing. We understand, but you know, it's like all things, it's a process and you kind of chip away at it, and we're getting there, but it's not the only solution. There's lots of things that we have to address. So. Well,
and just, you know, to sort of scoot us along, but I will say all of this stuff, we're really grateful for the folks who come out and talk to us about these things. We're grateful for the emails and the phone calls. And we're grateful when you reach out to us to tell us what you think about how we can do things better. So we really are making a strong effort to do the best that we can for residents, to use the best possible methods for, you know, we have a great city engineer who's like all up and up on the like latest sort of ways of doing these things in the hope that we can extend the life of these streets longer.
Yes.
But it is just like, you know, it's just hard to figure out how to do it better. So if you have ideas, we would love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
So then
Robert Street snow removal. So basically just authorize the contract to do that like we have done it in the past. It's per foot. It's on the commercial end, south of Butler on Robert Street within West St. Paul. We had talked about expanding that from Butler to Annapolis. There's some practical difficulties there that have come up. The one thing I will say, because I know I did talk to a lot of people that were pretty upset about some of the lack of maintenance on that end of town. Pretty specific statement tonight that code enforcement is going to pay a lot of attention to that stretch of land. And so if you are a business owner or a property owner on the north end from between Butler and Annapolis, because I don't want anybody getting cited, be attentive. You have to clear those sidewalks. People do walk use mobility devices, go to bus stops. We need those sidewalks cleared. And I know it's hard. I know there are the same practical difficulties that happen for our doing it within the city is also practical difficulties for property owners, but we can't let it slide. We can't let those become impassable because it really does deeply affect people. And as a business owner on that end, I've always said, it also affects businesses. If you do a great job of clearing your sidewalks and the person north of you doesn't, and now people that might be on foot can't get to your business, it's not just affecting the business that's not cleared, although I'd argue you're affecting your business pretty badly. You're affecting other neighboring businesses, which is not fair. The people that are doing the hard work, just everybody chip in with each other. If people want to talk to other neighboring businesses and maybe get together and say, hey, why don't we all share one snow removal thing, and that happened in some spots, that might be a good way to go. I mean, we can't tell you to do it, but if you own one of those buildings, I would say, talk to your neighbors and maybe you can get some efficiencies saying like, hey, if we all hire this company and they can do the full block instead of all of us hiring different companies, might be worth looking at. Just saying.
Well, and I'll just give a very quick statement about what the issue that we ran into, which was basically just the sidewalk is not very wide, and it's not wide enough for the commercial snow blower, but that also means it's not that big, so it is narrow enough for, it is wide enough for like a normal like snow blower, someone who goes out with like their own, whatever.
And property owners can choose to throw the snow into their property and deal with it. If we do it, we can't just go rolling by and blow all the snow into your parking lot that you just had plowed for obvious reasons. And so that's the other practical difficulty in doing it on that end is there isn't, you have these big walls, you have to blow up and into basically the yard area, or sometimes there's no space at all. And so since we can't get authorization to push it into the corner of the parking lot where your snowplow does, the city doing it's really just not an option right now. May change over time if it becomes worse. It was not great last year. It was a bad winter. If it gets worse this year, we may have to do some hard, fast, expensive decisions to try and make sure it's okay. And hopefully we don't get to that point. So if everybody chips in, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Right?
A final thing on an abatement order that we talked about last time. Again, not really anything that merits a lot of discussion. It's kind of a one thing problem. Just again, a reminder that we are looking at properties that may be having some difficulties and we're trying to make sure that they're attended to as they need to be. Simplest way to put it.
Yep. And that we typically, we've actually taken steps to push our enforcement into places where there are like really dire situations as opposed to like coming after your
trash cans.
So please take care of your trash cans. Don't make us look bad.
Yeah, but the trash cans are the easy one to mention because it's the easiest one to go like really not the longest impact that ever happens. But there are other things too that we're prioritizing things that are really safety, wellness aspects in our community more than some of the aesthetics. Within reason.
Yeah, within reason.
And we're still doing that, don't get me wrong, but we really want to focus on things that are dangerous, problematic, causing difficulties in neighborhoods for people because that's the stuff that, and once we get all that addressed, then we can work on other stuff. But
so, as usual, we will say, be good neighbors.
Be good neighbors. It's not hard.
So that's what we've got.
All right.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.